Here we go. Well, I want to thank you for joining us on our first Fireside Chat series. Today's topic is workers and wages. I'd like to introduce our member guests, Lura Seavey from the Department of Employment Security and James Plumer from the Department of Health and Human Services. Both Lura and James are state employees with an interesting perspective on what it's been like to work for the state during this pandemic. We also have a special guest joining us today. I'm very honored to have the Speaker of the House, Steve Shurtleff, with us, who is eager to hear from these workers who are still working diligently without a state contract. And Lura, I'd love to start with you. Tell us a bit about your experiences at Employment Security working in this pandemic.
Well, as the whole world knows, unemployment is exploding. So it's been challenging. My personal experience with the pandemic is in mid-April or so, I did need to take some time to be physically present at home. And I did request to work from home per the governor's memo from early March. And that request was denied. I was quite upset because I really do feel a great sense of responsibility to continue supporting the residents of New Hampshire. I did not want to be home and not working, but I did have to take care of my family. So while I was out, reached out directly and requested working from home again, and that was denied again. After about 2 weeks, the weight of the guilt, sense of responsibility. I know how many claims were sitting there untouched. My colleagues were working unbelievable hours, and I did come back. It was frustrating to me. We already had laptops and VPNs set up. There didn't seem to be an explanation, and it was very discouraging. I don't feel that I should have been put in a position to have to choose between my family and safety of my family and doing what I know is right as far as fulfilling my responsibilities at work when there is a viable alternative. Coming back into work, we are exposed daily to each other. In my particular job, I never come in contact with the public, but we have an office building full of people, many of whom don't, for whatever their own personal reasons, don't use PPE, don't remember to social distance. So we are exposed on a daily basis, and it is troubling. It is troubling. Several key employees still remain out of work due to medically related quarantines, and they have also been denied the right to work from home. They desperately want to work and are really struggling through this. So that's my biggest concern throughout all this.
Lura, thank you very much for sharing that with us. And James, you too are struggling to receive hazard pay, and tell us a little bit about your role and why the state should grant your colleagues hazard pay.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you, Speaker Shurtleff, for taking time to listen to us. I appreciate that. So I'm a juvenile probation parole officer. We're kind of an interesting hybrid cutout in the law enforcement world, where we don't kind of really fit 100% in any of the classic law enforcement positions. But nonetheless, it is our duty to respond in the community to clients in times of crisis at the direction of our supervisors. I myself have had to do this, and there are several other officers throughout the state who have had to, it's part of our job, go out in the community and directly interact with the public in their homes. And also several of us are doing work at SYSC to help mitigate the low staffing that they currently are dealing with. So, I think that it's a reasonable expectation that we're falling under the same, I certainly have as much contact as somebody who's on Marine Patrol, who is eligible. And, just in addition, beyond just me as a probation officer, but also, the other side of the coin are CPSWs that we work with. Many of them, assessment workers and others, are also must go out in certain circumstances to do their job and ensure the safety, health of the families in our community. So, those are two areas that I think of employees that, sorry, I have a child running around. So those are two groups of folks that I think really would benefit from and should be eligible for the stipend. Just real quick, what I've also seen and heard as far as the DOs, all the new DOs have low walls, one bathroom pretty much, limited PPE, and really no expectations or enforcement that I'm aware of as far as utilizing PPE. So that really, from what I've heard and seen, exposes those folks in the DOs in a ways that, that doesn't need to happen. So in general, those are sort of the concerns that I have.
Thank you.
Rich, I got to say right off, I retired from federal law enforcement, so there's a special place in my heart for probation and parole. And we worked a lot with the federal government, with the federal probation and parole offices, but a lot of times we'd work with the state on warrants. And they do a tremendous job, and they're very much a part of our law enforcement community and should be given the same benefits as any other law enforcement officer. They truly are the first line. And the sad thing about probation and parole, those that are in law enforcement, when they deal with people, they can feel that maybe 4% of the population has a criminal intent. But with probation and parole, they know they're dealing with people that have already committed a crime. And so it increases the risk to them that sometimes a law enforcement officer working the street doesn't have. So why they're not receiving hazard pay, I don't understand. We've got a meeting coming up on Monday of the Governor's Legislative Advisory Board, and I'll bring this up. They should be included in hazard pay.
If I may, Speaker, just to be clear, adult probation and parole are eligible according to what my understanding. The juvenile probation parole officers that I am part of are not. And
that doesn't make any sense.
No.
As we know, you're dealing with somebody 16, 17. Anybody 12 or 14 could do you bodily harm. And in some cases, because they don't have the ability to reason and to think out their emotions, there's actually a greater chance that they could hurt a probation officer than maybe an adult would, because of their lack of maturity. But it's something I will bring up at our meeting on Monday. I'm surprised in why they have the double standard for adult probation receiving it and juvenile not. It makes no sense whatsoever. And a lot of times you're interacting with family members as well, which involves the adults. And it's something that needs to be looked at. It's just not right. And as far as employment security goes, I've worked a lot with employment security over the past month, with a lot of people have written to me about problems with their claims. And I know they have a lot of folks from the National Guard that are so good to come in and help out. But every complaint that I've received so far is because the applicant has made a mistake on their application that has caused a delay. It's nothing that's been done by any state employee working for employment security. I talk fairly often with Commissioners Kapatis and Deputy Commissioner Livers, and almost every time I talk to them, they're telling me what a wonderful job their staff is doing, and they realize that the conditions are not good at all, that they have a lot of people in a very small area, and it's something that's got to be looked at. What we're seeing now with the pandemic, sadly is going to be with us for quite some time. It's not going to go away. At least it's not going to go away until we get a vaccine or some way to reduce the risk. And we've got to look at all our state agencies to find out what can be done to make the job that safer for those people doing it. I've heard from people, constituents that have gone into the liquor stores and seeing the employees wearing a cloth mask and having customers come in wearing nothing. And we know with the cloth mask, all that's doing is protecting other people. And so I worry about those people, working with people coming in that just don't seem to care about anybody else's health. It's all about their own needs. And it surprises me because New Hampshire overall has done such a tremendous job of working to get this epidemic under control and trying to protect their friends and families from getting the virus. And to see our state employees put in positions like that is really intolerable. I wish the governor, in all the many executive orders that he has issued over the last month and a half, would make it mandatory if you're out in public, everybody wears a protective mask. And we see it in the grocery stores, and we see it in other places. There is always that small percentage that just doesn't seem to get the message. And as I said, for those that are dealing directly with the public and our state agencies, and I think of our liquor stores as being a prime example, I think it's unfair to them to put them in harm's way by not requiring, if you want to come into that premise, you've got to have a mask on. It's the least you can do to take care of the people that are taking care of you.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you for those encouraging words, and Laura and James, I want to thank you for sharing your encouraging words too. And I just remind folks that you folks have been working without a state contract for almost a year. And the reason they still don't have a contract is because the state won't accept the wages that an independent third-party arbitrator recommended. And James and Laura, would either of you like to tell us your views on how it makes you or some of your coworkers feel to be out of contract?
If you don't mind, I personally feel that, you know, there's a lot of words, oh, you're being appreciated, you're doing great work, but they are just words at this point. We are doing such exemplary work. Not having a contract for a year is, it's disheartening, and it does make us feel undervalued, not valued. It is just an overall, you know, it's the hazard pay that you were talking about. It's part of that bigger trend of not wanting to fairly compensate state employees. I've heard the governor say so many times what an amazing job the employees of the state state employees are doing. The New Hampshire Employment Security, just give us a contract. It's a modest wage increase. You know, it's a pretty simple ask.
Agreed. I agree.
Well, you know, the compliments are nice, but the compliments don't pay the bills. And as you know, Rich, a joint committee of the legislature took up the issue of the fact finders report after the governor refused to bring it to the executive council for an up or down vote. And we overwhelmingly supported the fact finders report, and we're waiting now to get back into a regular session so the House and the Senate can bring it up for a vote of both those bodies. We know, unfortunately, if we approve it, we don't know what action the governor, if anything, he will do. And now that he has these powers of the emergency, it's even more difficult to try to figure out what actions the governor will take. But it's a sad commentary. We got outstanding state employees that do so much and give so much of their own time to make this such a wonderful state to live in. And to have an independent third party say, wait a minute, this is what these people should be getting to get a fair wage. and to have the governor totally disregard that, and then not have it brought before the executive council for an up or down vote is outrageous. It's denying them their just wages, and really trying to balance the state budget on the backs of our hardest working employees. And it's really outrageous. And I know that's the feeling of people in both the House and the Senate.
And we
Yeah.
appreciate those friends in the House and the Senate, and you're preaching to the choir when you say that. It is. We're all, I think people forget that we're also citizens and stakeholders in state government. And that's why we've dedicated our lives to serving the state. And just that appreciation, especially now, would go such a long way. It really would. I want to thank all of you for joining us. And I hope others tune in on the next Fireside Chat, where we'll be discussing workers and safety with a few other members. In the meantime, for our viewers who would like to take action now, we would encourage you to call 844-967-2163 by Friday and leave a message for your congressional Senate representatives demanding federal support for state and local governments. They bailed out Wall Street and the airlines. Now it's time for them to take care of our frontline essential workers. And again, Laura, James, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you all for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.